Dr. Friend, thanks so much for being on this with us today. I know you talked with the University of Colorado students a couple weeks back, and it seemed like on that call there was primarily like third and fourth year students. But today we've really got students from all levels of training. We've got some residents, we've got D1s all the way through D4s, and so I guess the one thing I wanted to start off today asking you was, we have a student, who just started D1. What would be your advice for them? For someone just entering clinic or D3s, what is your advice for them? And finally, for either those residents or those D4s that are about to step foot in private practice, what is your advice for them? So kind of three questions in one.
Is just what advice for the dental students?
Yeah, what are the things you just say to focus on?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. First of all, let's backtrack it to the decision. Was it a good idea to become a dentist, especially if you're going to enter? This is August. I mean, school starts. When does your class start for the new D1s? Did they just start already?
We started early July.
You started. The freshmen started in July.
Yes,
wow, I'm so old. We didn't start till end of August or September. But I want to backtrack to the decision of being a dentist first, because that's the fundamental, that's the foundation of this pyramid. And the bottom line is, my gosh, the only wealth is health. I mean, would you take $1 billion? Would you win $1 million right now to drop dead? I mean, you only want to be alive. Life is good, and health, the only true wealth is health. And so, I always like Milton Friedman's example of the little blue pill. When people would say we spend too much money on healthcare, he'd hold up this little blue pill and say, okay, your choices are, you're either going to die tonight or you're going to buy this little blue pill, and you're not going to die tonight. Well, how much money would you give me for this pill if your only other option was you die tonight? Well, the Mayo brothers figured out that, hell, they'll sell the family farm, give you the tractor. They'll give you everything they can to beat this cancer and to live longer. We got go to the girl. Was it Amy? Was that your name, Amy?
Yes.
So, Amy, how much money would I have to pay you right now to extract your front tooth, and you can never replace it the rest of your life? You'll just have to tell everyone you're from New Orleans and go with it. How much money? How much cash? I mean, you got student loans right now, right?
Yeah.
So how much cash could I bribe you to pull number 8 and never replace it right now at this moment in your life? How much?
A large amount. I don't know if I'm going to be a dentist. If I'm missing a front tooth, I don't know if I'd ever be able to work.
So that's the bottom line. People don't want to, and I play these games with my grandkids. I mean, like, what would, when my boys were little and they'd say, oh, I want that motorcycle so bad. And I'd say, okay, if I cut off your leg, would you trade your leg for that motorcycle? Would you trade your arm? And it's just so amazing how every species just wants to survive. And so going into dentistry is kind of interesting, because you can smoke and drink and turn your lungs black and your liver upside down and no one will even see it. But you pull your front tooth, your teeth aren't pretty, they're not straight. You got to look as pretty as a peacock, because your only goal is to survive long enough to reproduce and have offspring to replace yourself. And unless you look as pretty as a peacock, that's going to be hard to do. If you die, it's going to be impossible to do. So going into healthcare, and then look at the math. In 1900, the GDP of healthcare in the United States was 1% of GDP. By the end of the century, it was 14% of GDP. Now it's 2020, it's 17% of GDP. And all these idiot politicians that are saying, we got to bring down the price of healthcare. I mean, guys, this is going to be 1/3 of our GDP. I mean, I don't care if grandma lives to be 125. When she gets liver cancer at 125, guess what she's going to want? Treatment. And she's not going to want to die. So people don't want to die. They want to keep living on and on and on. So going into healthcare is a great thing. Dentistry is extra great because not only is it healthcare, but it's an intersection with cosmetic dentistry, meaning that, again, you could have a pancreas going south on you and it wouldn't bother you. But, once your hair falls out or your teeth fall out or you get wrinkles or whatever, it's so in your face that that people are going to reward that. The other thing about D1, D2, D3, I would be really telling them about is, so you need to know the macro. Like my mom used to always tell me, she said, a great idea, when you go to bed, that's a good time to plan. And she goes, you should think about what you want to do tomorrow. You should think about what your goals are for the year. But she goes, you should also think about what your goal is for life. She goes, have you ever gotten in bed and when you're pulling up the covers at night, think, okay, they're closing the casket? Well, where would you want to be there? Well, if you know where you're going to be when they close the casket, because you're all going to die. I mean, no one's beat death or taxes yet. So you're going to die. So if you know you'll die someday, what's the best case scenario? Say you live to be 100 years. Okay, I don't care. Let's go 120 to get everyone. You're 120 years old and they're closing the casket. Where do you want to be then? Well, if you know at 1900, healthcare was 1% of the GDP, and now it's 17%. And that it's all specializing. In 1900, there were no specialties. In the year 2000, dentistry had 9 specialties. Now it's 2020, and we're already up to 12. They just added oral medicine and oral pain and all these other ones. So now we're up to 12. So dental specialists make 320, and general dentists make 197. So you see this 120-year trend towards specialization. I mean, my friend that's an ophthalmologist, he's got another friend that only does the retinas. He's got another friend that only does glaucoma. I mean, you can't even say that you're an eye doctor, or you're an eye doctor that just specializes in diabetes, retinal detachment, all these things. So dentistry's gone from 9 specialties to 12 in last year. I mean, last year they added 3. It's really going to go specialist. And then when you have a very specific disease, say you have retinal detachment of your left eye, well, you don't want to go to a chiropractor. You don't want to go to a dentist. You don't want your dentist to say, well, you should go see my oral surgeon. No, you want to go to an eye doctor who specializes in your disease. And you see this economically being rewarded, where dental specialists average 320 and general practitioners 197. Now, I've been out of school 32 years. You guys are babies. You're still in kindergarten school. You got to come out, and then you're going to do 30, 40 years. So this trend is already rock solid for 120 years, and then you're going to go out and live in it for 40 more years. You can't go back in time. You're not going to reverse this trend. So obviously, specialization is better. Look at endo. When the insurance companies who never really work with the general dentist, they're never transparent. They never share their data. Delta Dental has hundreds of millions of claims. And when I podcast interview the chief economist at the ADA, Marco Vucicek, he doesn't even get access to that data. But if you had access to that data, you would start seeing things like when an endodontist does 100 million molar root canals in 5 years, 5% of them are extracted. When a general dentist does it, it's 10%. So we know 1 out of 20 endodontist root canals are going to fail. So what's that about? Is it misdiagnosis? Is it cracked teeth? Is it whatever? But when your mom or dad who's a dentist does it, and is a general dentist, it's twice the failure rate. It's 10%. So that's one of the reasons why it's going towards specialists. DSOs don't even like general dentists doing their molars anymore, because if that root canal failed, if you're a general dentist and you break a file, they're going to have to pay to send this off to an endodontist. So, because when he breaks the file, he just says, well, I'm an endodontist. Well, endodontists are allowed to break a file. Endodontists can do anything wrong and kill 5% of your teeth. And the board of dentistry, the Arizona Board of Dental Examiners, and the lawyers and the juries are going to say, hey, they did the best they could. When a specialist does it, they did the best they could. That's that top 5% fail in 60 months. But when you do it, you're always bad because you're not a specialist. You should have had a specialist done. So the DSOs are sick of having a failed root canal, have to be sent to an endodontist to have it retreated. They pay for that. Let's say we do a root canal and insurance pays me $750 and it fails, and I got to go pay an endodontist $1,200 to retreat it. Well, that $1,200 to retreat it, those are paid with profit dollars. When I get $1 in my office, I have to pay adjusted production. Say the fee is $1,000, but the HMO only gives me the dental insurance only gives me $650. Now I got 35% cost just in taking this insurance participation. That's the biggest overhead in dentistry is never even mentioned, and that's insurance participation. Your fee is $1,000. You sign up for this plan, and they only pay you $650. So $350 of your cost was signing up for this insurance plan. Next would be labor 25%, supplies 10%, lab bill 10%, supplies 6%, mortgage 5%. But when I go pay $1,200 to have that root canal redone, those are profit dollars. I had to pay my rent, mortgage, equipment, bill out, computer, insurance, malpractice, professional dues, all that kind of stuff. So to get $1,200 profit dollars to redo that root canal, how many root canals would I have to do? Well, I charge $1,000. Insurance pays me $650. You have an associate dentist there. You pay him 25%. You have your overhead, which is 2/3. That's another 65%. You're looking at a 15% margin. How many dollars would you have to do to have enough profit dollars to pay for that to be redone? So the point that long rant was making is that it's headed towards specialization. I mean, it's too complicated. I mean, again, it gets crazy when you think about dentistry because you're in dental school and maybe your mom or dad's a dentist and all that. But go to the eye. I mean, there's not going to be an eye doctor. There's going to be an optician doing glasses, and there's going to be, it's a very big variety of things. The insurance companies pay more for specialists, so they're a major driver of this practice. And then next is for enterprise. Dentists who own their own practice make $244,000 a year, and dentists who are employees make $147,000. So it's $100,000 a year bonus to work for yourself than someone else. Duh, because why would I hire you to work for me and then pay you more than me? I don't know. Maybe you're trying to get reach sainthood. Maybe you're trying to get anointed. Maybe you think this is going to get you to be a saint. I don't know, but you're not going to see it out there in the real world. Most people hire other people so they can make more money. They scale. Think of it like this. I go get a lawnmower. I push a lawnmower around and I can make, say, $1 a week pushing a lawnmower. But then I think, well, my gosh, if I buy 5 lawnmowers and get 5 guys to push that, and I run that 5 lawn mowing crews, now I'm going to make $5 an hour or $5 a day or a year or whatever, 5 times as much. So the whole game of economics and growth and scale is why you see that dentists who are employees make $147, and they're paid by the dentists who own the practices, and those guys make $244. Now, when you look at DSOs, I want you to think of DSOs in 2 different levels. There's first level DSOs, which I'm a big fan of, and there's second level DSOs, which I don't know what they're doing, and either does NASDAQ or Wall Street, because none of them are publicly traded. So when they tell you we're the greatest business in the world, saying, well, I mean, what's the craziest company that you know of on NASDAQ that's publicly traded? I think it would be that, what was that app where you take it? Snapchat? I mean, really, Snapchat goes public, but Heartland Dental and Bob Fontana's Aspen and Stephen Thorne's Pacific Dental, they're not public. Like what? Why would I need a Snapchat? I mean, I don't even know what it is.
Selfies
but I know
business.
What is it?
I said selfies are big business.
Yeah, I mean, so I've made it 58 years without Snapchat. I'm thinking I can go 58 more without it, but I didn't go 58 years without seeing a dentist. I didn't go 58 years without getting my impacted wisdom teeth from pericornitis and all that stuff like that. So when you don't need something and it's publicly traded, Snapchat, and then you really need something like dentistry, and there's not one publicly traded company in America on any of these DSOs, it's got to be a red flag. And if anything, I know I ask these people these questions all the time, and but they own the company, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. But here's the way I see it. I've been in so many small towns. Say it's 100,000, easy math, and some guy's on the south side, and he's got a practice, and he thinks, the problem with marketing is I can't market to just south of town. The radio, the TV, the billboards. It's easier to market. It's faster, easier, cheaper to advertise to the whole town than it is breaking a town. Like the newspaper, like I'm sure the Birmingham newspaper doesn't just go to the south side of Birmingham or the north side or the east. It goes to the whole damn city. So how do you advertise in the Birmingham newspaper, billboards, radios, TV? How do you do anything in sections? So a lot, and the other thing is a dentist wears too many hats. So it was hard for me when I got out of school. The first 10 years was chasing down an FAGD, an MAGD, a diplomat in International Congress, oral implantology, all these fellowships. And I was just, I took about 500 hours of continuing education a year the first 10, 20 years out of school. So it was a full-time job just to try to learn how to be an average dentist. My root canals can't be compared to an endodontist. My perio skills can't be consulted to a periodontist. You're just chasing down all this knowledge just so you can be an average general dentist and not do anything at the level of a specialist who does it full time. Come on, if you're an endodontist and all you do is molar root canals 5 days a week for 10 years, dude, if you're not better at it than my mom, there's something wrong with you. You know what I mean? You just should be better at it than my mom, because my mom's never done one. And so the bottom line is the specialties is a great example of where this market is going. It's going there full speed ahead. But the DSOs, just trying to learn all this dentistry. And then I got to be HR and a hire and fire. And I know at this point in your life, it's the most important part, but you might not realize it applying to dentistry. Like go to football. I'm very lucky because I live in Arizona, which is the home of the greatest NFL team that ever existed, the Arizona Cardinals. I think we can all agree on that. The Cardinals are America's team, not the Cowboys. And they have HR is everything, because if you get the right quarterback and the right running back and the right, if you get the best players, you won the game. Basketball is an easier analogy because it's only 5 people. If you got 5 people on the floor and you got, Kobe and MJ and, you got LeBron James. If you get the 5 best players, you win every game. Doesn't matter if the basketball is made out of pig skin or pork skin, or if it's indoor arena, outdoor arena. Doesn't matter if it's on HBO. None of that crap matters. All the business of basketball doesn't matter if you got the 5 best players. So in dentistry, HR is huge, but you'll go into dental offices and you'll see some dentist who's been in there 20 years. And I'll say to each staff member, how long have you worked here? And everybody's worked there like 2 or 3 years. I'm like, damn, dude, you've been here 20 years and no one's worked with you for more than 2 years. Well, he blames all these people. I say, who's your scout? Who's in charge of HR? Who's out there looking at all the college football players to see who's good enough that you want to draft? Oh, I do that all myself. Okay, well, you suck at it. I'm looking at your 20 years of data. You suck really bad at HR. And this affects everything. Say you go into a town of 5,000 and this dentist has been there 40 years and you come back 40 years. I say, well, what do you need most? And he goes, well, what I really need is new patients. I'm like, dude, you got 25 new patients a month, 12 months a year for 40 years. Think about that. You're in a town of 5,000. I'll do the math. I'll take, where's my calculator? I'll take 25 new patients a month times 12. That's 300 times 40 years. Okay, so you've gotten 12,000 new patients and you're in a town of 5,000. How did you get everybody in the town 2.5 times? Because no one ever came back to you. Why did they not come back? They came in and they said, oh, I want to try Dr. Stewart's hamburger. And they eat it and they spit it out. They say, God, that was horrible. I know, man. His idea was to switch out the pickles with crawdads, and we told him not to do it, but this is his thing. This is his, So the bottom line, at some point, you have to realize you're not good at something, and it's usually HR. And then next would be business. Like I could walk in. How many of you have a mom or a dad that's a dentist? 5 people? No one? Anybody in the family? Anybody have a dentist in their family? Oh my gosh, these are the 5. Are you guys now? Are you all orphans or just 3 of you? How many of you were raised in an orphanage? You got one guy that what?
Like I said, we got
everyone on the call list.
A couple folks that have dentists as parents.
I always tell kids in dental school, I could kill your dad with one question. I'll just walk in there. He'll do a hygiene check, and I'll come out and say, okay, you've had this same hygienist for 10 years. She just did another cleaning exam and bite wings. She's done this a gazillion times. Did you make $9.14 after taxes, or did you lose $13? Your dad doesn't have a clue. The only people that know their cost are DSOs, and that's why they're doing so well, because they're making business decisions, even though I don't like level 2 DSOs. I don't even see why they work. Level 1 is what we're talking about. So one of the first things I did is I hired a comptroller. Stacy, she's been with me, 20 plus years or whatever. The bottom line is I know all my numbers. I do that in-house. Like a lot of people say, well, should I use a bookkeeper or a CPA? I don't know. I have my own employee, and I had my own employee doing this for me in-house before I was big enough to afford it, because I knew you would never be able to afford anything if you don't know your numbers. Everybody that ever became a millionaire, billionaire, whatever, they all know their costs more than anything. In fact, if you ask any millionaire, well, how do you become a millionaire? They say, well, I made this for $1 and I sold it for $2 1 million times. And it doesn't matter if this is a bottled water or a root canal, they know their cost. They bought it for $1, they sold it for $2. They have a 50% overhead, and that's how they made $1 million. You go into a dentist, and I'll go through the dentist, and at the end of the day, I'll sign out and say, okay, you did 8 exactly the same fillings day, 8 MOD composites a day. How much money do you get for an MOD composite? And I swear every time he'll quote a number that's higher than any fees going. He's like, well, I'll get about $250 for an MOD. Okay, bozo, the best plan you're on gives you $200, but you also do it for this one that gives you 180, 160, all the way down to $100. So you're doing 8 fillings a day between $100 and $200. Okay, what do you think your overhead is? Do you think because if your overhead is 50%, that means the one you're doing for $200, you made 50% profit, but the one you did for $100, you did for free. I mean, you did at 100% overhead. Do you think you did that filling at 100% overhead? I mean, they don't even know their costs. And I love dentists so much because they go to school for 8 years to learn how to work with their hands. I mean, all dentists work with their hands, just like welders, plumbers, surgeons. They work in an operatory. And what are they doing? Are they welding? Are they drilling for water? No. Someone's coming in pain. I love it. And you're like, I can help you. And you get them back there and they're scared and you give them a shot and all this stuff like that. And if they're afraid of needles, then you just give them a rear naked chokehold till they pass out. And then when they're passed out on the floor, then you numb them up real quick. And then when they wake up, you get them to the chair. And the bottom line is I love them. But, man, they don't know their numbers. They don't know their math. They never, ever, ever know the business of dentistry. Even the ones who think they're like really successful in business are mostly saying that they're really motivated. They hustle a lot in a very non-competitive industry. But if you move that person to something like, fast food, they'd be bankrupt in 90 days. And they don't even know that, and they don't even believe it, and it'd be true 100% of the time. 100% of the time. There'd be no exceptions to it.
Can I ask a quick question about in that subject?
Yeah.
How do you feel about classes like the breakaway, or like even whenever we get out of school and buy our first practice? Do you recommend hiring consultants right away, or wait until a couple months when you're used to the practice and then hiring consultants to try to optimize what we're doing there?
And what level are you? D1, D2, D3, D4, D2? The answer to it really is a personal trainer. I mean, you look at the greatest athletes; they all have coaches, and everybody that becomes an Olympian has a coach. But then you get this huge middle tier of millions of Americans who just figure out on their own how to eat right, how to exercise, how to do all that stuff. But if you're not exercising, eating right, and you don't have a coach, then you just double gave up. I mean, so the best answer would be, my goal is to get a gold medal, and I'm going to get the best coach. The next idea is you can figure out all this for a fraction of the cost. Like I love Scott Loon. He's been on the program 3 times. Love him, his family, his wife. They're just good people. Love them. But my gosh, there's just cheaper ways. Like if you told me your goal was to do 100 push-ups and you said, well, I could watch these 3 YouTube videos for free, or I could get this 100-day push-up challenge for $19.99, I'd say, well, dude, don't spend $2,000 on a push-up video. You know what I mean? So you could get all that information. Like I have the 30-day dental MBA, and it's free on YouTube. It's free on iTunes. You got Dental Town with 6 million posts. So I believe in consultants. Like I've had out Sandy Pardue, I had Sally McKenzie. I've always had consultants. So everybody I know who's like does over 3 or 4 million a year or takes home more than $250,000 to $400,000 a year, and they're as old as me, they've had a major consultant every 5 years the whole time they're being it. But where there's no excuse is, well, it's not no excuse. Maybe you have depression, maybe you have other challenges, but when you don't know what you're doing and you don't get a consultant, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I mean, I don't know why you're not going for it. But back to that long trend for the D1, D2, or yourself a D3. The DSOs, but let me just finish the DSO deal, is that, they start with an HR person, because getting the right players on the Cardinals football team is everything. And then the next would be, you got to know your numbers. You need your own account. You need your own cost of goods and services. You can't find a single dentist. They'll say things like, I can't believe Delta's only giving me $650 for a crown. I go, well, what is your net income on a single unit crown? They wouldn't even know. And then they sit around at the table, and I all know the dentist, and one dentist say, well, my overhead's 50%. Well, he believes that, but he doesn't know that he bought the land. Like the picture behind you, that Today's Dental, I bought that land in oh my God, I got out of school in 87. I think I bought it in 94. So I bought that land in 94. It's that land, building, it's all paid for. Well, if I don't charge myself rent, well, I got lower overhead than the guy across the street who's paying a mortgage on that. But if you knew accounting, they would say, well, you can't have $1 million tied up into a commercial land and building in Phoenix, Arizona, without us figuring out a cost of capital for this rent. So that property is held in a separate corporation. It's my name backwards. Instead of Ferran, it's Naraf. And then Naraf charges rent to Today's, it's complicated. But that's what you call your standard accounting practices. You got to know your taxes and all that stuff. So when you scale to a north, south, east, west location, I can have a headquarters of an HR, an accountant, and a marketer, and maybe just an extra all-around person. Well, that's really efficient. And all the dentists who do that, basically, I see it mostly in small towns. So it'll be a small town of 100,000. Now, in a small town, the country's got a dentist for every 2,000 people. So small towns have a dentist for every 1,000 people, because remember, in that small town, the draw is the same size as the town. So when you go to a town of 10,000, the people that drive into that town for Walmart and all the stuff is another 10,000. So it's always a dentist for every 2,000 at the end of the day. So when you look at that, there's 10 dentists in that town. The draw's 20,000, right? So there's 2,000. But when the old guy when the guy's still hustling sees the old guy put up his practice for sale, well, he didn't want young Sam and young Jeff and young Amy and Vo and Steven and you guys buying the practice. You're young, you got energy, you're going to hustle, you'll take risk. And my gosh, so what do? They sit there and they say, well, how much does it cost in marketing to get a new patient? Like if I do a flyer or a TV, whatever I do, what is my marketing cost for a new patient? And usually that's going to be somewhere between $150, maybe $100 and $300, let's say. And the guy says, well, you're selling your practice. You got 1,000 active patients, and at 1,000 times 300, if I bought your practice for 300,000, and then you sent them all a letter and said, when I'm selling my practice, I think the best guy that you should go to is my buddy here across the street or down the street or whatever. So then so he goes to that town, he sets up 100,000, there's 10 people. And then 5 years later, the town's grown a little bit, but now there's only 9 dentists. And 5 years later, there's only 8 because he keeps doing that. He keeps buying out the elderly. And my gosh, is that an amazing strategy. But other people do it with north, south, east, west, where they get a management team. And then the next thing, that dentist has got a management team. He's got 4 offices, north, south, east, and west. They're not even seeing patients, and they're rich and they're millionaires. But what's the national ones? Like, then what happens at your Heartlands and Fontanas and all that stuff? Well, you have another layer of management. And that layer of management wants about 17% off the top. Well, my lab bill's 10, my supply's 6. What could that second layer of management do for me that would be so beneficial? It'd be the same benefit as me not having to pay for lab and supplies. Well, I can't think of any. And I don't think Wall Street can think of any. And Wall Street would take your dog public if it could and make $1 million. I mean, Wall Street, the only heart and soul I've seen it is money's the answer. What's the question? They're not really into the truth, liberty, justice, pursuit of freedom, and all that kind of stuff. None of them would take any of these guys public. So that first layer, but see, that's not what they want. They want to, they take that first layer, then a big DSO is going to want to go mop up all these little errors and go to public and go be a billionaire. And that's the Wall Street plan and play. But Wall Street's not buying it because they tried that when I was your age. When I was your age, Orthodontic Centers of America tried doing this. They went and got a $100 million line of credit, started buying up all the old men that were selling their orthodontic practice. And it was just a disaster because when the old man sold the practice that he built for 40 years, they'd have to hire some kid like you straight out of ortho kindergarten. And they just couldn't keep it going. The whole thing collapsed. They had a dozen in NASDAQ. They all collapsed. They're all gone. And they left a horrible reputation in Wall Street. And that's why I think you'll see more Snapchats. I think Pornhub is more likely to go public than a dental DSO. And I think that's obvious. For all I know, it already is public. But the bottom line is one level of management skill. One level of HR, marketing, accounting to help 3 or 4 offices. Oh, hell yeah. But then that second layer, that second level of management, dentistry is so flat that it's so flat, only one layer of management at a time. And that's in your office. And then the next layer, from Jennifer DeMore to everyone. Hi, a D1 here. What is a DSO? Hee hee. Sorry about that. DSO is a dental service organization. So the big names to be Rick Workman, Heartland, Stephen Thorne at Pacific Dental, Aspen Dental. These are 800 to 1,000 location dental office, a dental services organization. And I'm in Arizona, which has the highest percent of dentists working for a DSO, and that's 18%. That's almost 1 in 5. Now you look at that long line, the bottom, the end 5 states, they're not even at 1%. But Arizona is at the highest. So that was the deal. I was saying specialize. I was saying own your own practice. And then next is blood and guts. Oral and maxillofacial surgeons net 448. Periodontists are 330. Endodontists 307. Pediatric dentists, I guess that's better than, shooting yourself. 304. Then you drop down to orthodontists and it's 289. So see, you've gone from blood and guts, I'm in pain. That's where the money is in dentistry. They call you, oh my God, I hurt, I can't chew, I can't eat. I mean, can you imagine America not eating? That'd be like a bird not flying. I mean, Americans were only born to eat. I mean, I am committed to obesity, diabetes. I just drink water when I'm on the air. But the bottom line is, you got to be. They go. Why do they go to the emergency room? They're in a car wreck. They fell off their bike. They broke their arm. They broke their leg. They're not at the emergency room saying, "Well, I just kind of feel funny. I woke up this morning with a little sniffle." No, they're bleeding. They hurt. Oral surgeons, I got wisdom teeth impacted. Perio, I got bleeding gums and teeth falling out. Endo, I can't sleep or eat. Pediatric dentistry, my kid was up all night crying and screaming. Orthodontist, well, I just want to be as pretty as a peacock. I just, they get ortho twice in their life. They get it. The mom and dad will buy ortho in high school because if they can't get married, they'll have to go to the nunnery and become a nun or a priest, or it's just, it's complicated and they want grandkids. So they Okay, we'll spend $5,000 in Billy so that maybe some girl will fall for it and marry her and make me a grandkid. But it starts going down rapidly. And orthodontics is, I think, the one under the most pressure. I mean, if you had to say to me, I'd always say, just do what you love. I mean, you'll never work a day in your life if you do what you love. Like, why am I sitting here talking to you? My God, I'd rather talk to you guys for an hour than go talk to the idiot at the bar. You know what I mean? I love dentistry. I love doing it. I love talking about it. I love writing it. I love everything about dentistry. If that's the way you feel about orthodontics, then go do it. But orthodontics, look at Smiles Direct Club. The diagnosing and treatment planning it looks like it's going to be done by artificial intelligence. After you've taken 1 million cephs and scans, it looks like your iPhone's going to be able to do most of what an orthodontist is going to do as far as the diagnosis and treatment planning. But they're under a lot of pressure. But an oral surgeon, when you come out of oral surgery school, your gosh darn first job out of oral surgery school will give you a base pay in Arizona for $350 versus 45% of production. So a lot of the new ones in Arizona, the first year out of school, they're making $500,000-$600,000. And by the way, a lot of you kids will give up easily. You'll say, "Well, I want to be an endodontist," and you'll apply to endo school, and you don't get accepted, so you just throw in the towel. That's not winners, man. Winners. Muhammad Ali. Champions are the ones who get their back off the mat. You're all going to get knocked out and hit the mat. It's the champions that crawl to their feet. And sometimes when they get kicked out and they don't get accepted in specialty school, they go all the way to Barbados. And I'll tell you what, I'd rather spend 2 years in endo school in the Bahamas than in Canada or Nova Scotia. My gosh, I've been down there. I don't even know how they pass school because I would just be at the beach all day long drinking a Mai Tai. And but they come out and then they get their license. The licensors don't care. They go through the process or whatever, but they don't give up. They just keep going and they become the oral surgeon and they make $448, periodontist $330, endodontist $307, pediatric dentist $304. So I would keep that in mind. At this point, I don't even know what question I'm answering. So do you want to give me a new question or repeat the old one?
Well, Dr. Ferrin, do you feel like
call me Howard,
I know you
please.
just kind of mentioned. Okay. So do you think the benefits of specializing, do those diminish for like an older student graduating, perhaps someone like 35 or someone a little bit older than the typical graduate?
No, I think look at healthcare journals. I started my own healthcare publication in '94, and I started it because I didn't like all the advertisements. You'd see this article that you knew was bullshit, but it was right next to a full-page ad. So I started a non-advertising, subscription-only, $10 an issue magazine. And found out I did it for 94, 95, 96, 97, 98. Only 4,000 dentists was willing to pay $10 an issue, $119 a year for advertising free information. And so that's the market. They won't even pay for news. They'd rather take all the fake news and fake dental journal news than pay. And those specialists, it's a 120-year-old trend. It started in 1900. It's 2020. Oh, that magazine journal. There's now 40,000 healthcare journals. So I have a healthcare journal. There's 40,000 of them in the United States. Well, you can't keep up. You couldn't read all the general dentistry ones. There's endodontists that can't read all the endo journals. I know a hygienist in Arizona, and her name's Trish, and she reads all the perio journals, anything that has to do with perio and hygiene, and she's been doing this for like 40 years. Well, in order for her to do that, she doesn't have a TV in her house. She doesn't let any TV, no music, no. She can barely read all the perio and hygiene. So to sit there and be a master in periodontics and a master in endodontics and a master in pediatric dentistry. Look at pediatric dentists. You can't even get them to figure out silver diamine fluoride and agree on it. My gosh. Orthodontists, and there's so much knowledge to know that to have a strategy to say, look, there are 12 specialties, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get rid of 11 of them right now. And now I'm just going to learn endo. And my God, you just made your life 11/12 easier. And you're going to make an extra $100,000 a year unless you own your own endo practice. And then, I mean, you're making bank. So yeah. So if you can sit there and say, yeah, there's 12 things I need to learn. Let's move 11 of them off the table. Now I only got to learn one thing and I make $100,000 more. It's a no brainer. And then, and that's, like I say, it's a 120-year trend that ain't turning around. I've lectured in 50 countries. I do not see this trend even flattening anywhere. It's just all going up. And look at our physicians. We're at 20%. We're at 20. We have 150,000 general dentists in America working 32 hours a week or more, and 30,000 specialists. And that's about the 80-20 rule. I just posted another state. Let me see what this state was and what their level at. What state was I playing with? Here it is, Lithuania. Lithuania is 87% general dentists, 13%. But see, that's an old from the Soviet Union. They were economically stagnated from the Bolsheviks to the Berlin Wall, but they're at 13%. I guarantee you, if I flew away and came back in 25 years, that 13% is going to be 23%. So it's all going to specialists. And the other thing is about human minds. You got to understand limits. Like, you ever heard that person who brags, well, I can speak 5 different languages? Well, the scientists think that you're only going to learn 30,000 words. So if you know 5 languages, you know 5 of them barely. But if you only know 1 language, you got 30,000 words of just 1 language. That's real good. And they've been doing that in social constructs too. With like gorillas, did you realize gorillas only have about 12 friends? And when you put 24 of them together, what do? They break into 2 clans. Dolphins do it. Humans do it. Humans actually, believe it or not, your friend capacity, you might think you have 100 friends, but when they study you like a scientist, say, okay, but you have 100,000 million friends, but you spend almost all your time texting, talking, emailing, and FaceTime to 12 people or less. You know why? Because you're related to that gorilla. I know you don't want to hear it. I know you think he smells funny, but your cousins have shown you what your limits are. So, so I would also, these trends aren't going anywhere. Back to the limits. I mean, I don't think you can learn everything about dentistry in the 12 deals. I think we already know vocabulary limits. We know social limits. And I think healthcare specialists is saying, dude, there's only so much knowledge you're going to hold in your knocker. And, so I'd rather just load up with 1 thing instead of 12. And you probably only have 30,000 words. I doubt you really want to go to bed at night with a brain that only has 30,000 words, and half of them have regard to root canals and dentistry and crowns. You probably like to think of other things like your 12 friends. What other questions?
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and we'll probably just do one last question, because I know some people are getting hungry because we're getting around dinner time. But some people were wondering a little bit about the specializing in AEGDs versus GPRs. I know you talked a lot about how the advantages of specializing. I know a lot of people are concerned about the debt associated with going into specialty. And what about the advantages, or what do you think about the GPRs and focusing on something in that area? And
well, there's a big, so especially as I become an endodontist, a GPR is I just learned more stuff out of dental school. And that is in decision-making. I always like you to think of the question is a square. What should I do? The first year out of dental school, you want a job. The triangle is what you decide to do. But in the decision-making, all the research, the failures are you just don't fill out your circle. So let me explain it like buying a house. So you decide you want to buy a house, and a realtor shows you a house and you buy it, and you square, I want to buy a house. Circle, she showed you one. Triangle, you bought that damn house. And then the next year you find out that there were all kinds of other houses for sale in that neighborhood that were bigger, nicer, and had more things you like a swimming pool or whatever. So the decision people would say, well, you didn't fill out your circles. So when you come out of dental school, what I want you to do is I want you to fill out your circles. Like you say, okay, I can go get an AEGD. Well, how much money are they going to pay you? You might have $400,000 student loans, and they might say, I'll only pay you $85,000, and another one might only pay you $45,000, and you might be able to get a job at Heartland and make $200,000 the first year. Well, I would go to the DSO. And the other thing about the DSO, by the way, when I say this, I realize that right now I'm going to give part of the speech that only Mormons will listen to. If you're not a Mormon, just, change the music. Any Mormons on the screen there? Any LDS? My God. Any of you married right now with a kid at home? Are you married right now?
I'm
Steve?
married, no kids. Viet does have kids though.
I am married with a kid.
You're married with kid in dental school?
Yes, sir. Crushing
So
it.
then you are a Mormon.
No.
Oh my gosh, you just blew a whole book of statistics just exploded. But the bottom line is, if you're married and you have a family, well, you the party's already in your house, they'll go rural. And if you look at the Pew research, Pew, everybody thinks of as the oceanography. It's a big nonprofit. They study how to save the oceans, but their next big thing after oceans is healthcare, and they do the research on all 50 states. I mean, like I just got to go to Pew and I can tell you every town in Arizona that doesn't even have a dentist, and 11% of the Midwest doesn't have a dentist. Well, my gosh, these dentists will go with Heartland or themselves. Like, look at Iowa. Iowa has a list of 10 cities that say, if you go here, we'll give you a check for $100,000. And Delta Dental of Iowa, they'll give you a check for $100,000. So you can go to this town of 5,000, no dentist, you got $200,000, and the first year they'll do like $1 million and take home 400,000. But what do they all have in common? They're already married with kids, and they don't care that they're living in a town of 5,000. I mean, I grew up in Wichita, Kansas. I mean, I don't know. You can do it or you can't. But the reason I think it's a lot easier than you think is because we're this far from driverless cars. I mean, fully autonomous driverless cars are within just a few years away. Phoenix was the ground for Google. And my gosh, could you imagine if you are an hour and a half, say you live in the city, but you practice an hour and a half. Well, that'll just mean your alarm goes off at 6 and you get up and you go crawl in the back seat of a box. It'll just be like a U-Haul box with 4 wheels, and you'll go back to bed. And then an hour and 15 minutes later, they go, ding, you're here. And or you might have an office, like on the way home, you have your office computer, like how you're sitting there right there. That will be in a box. Oh my God, that's so cool that you're drinking a beer right there. But so the bottom line is the commute is gone. In fact, I think you're going to like the commute because, it's hard to get anything done at home because you got the wife and kids all talking. You go to work and everybody from every cubicle is going to come over and say, what did you do? Blah, 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 blah. And I think they're going to enjoy an hour or 2 hour commute in a box with no windows, just sitting at their laptop, getting all their work done. Then they go into work where they got to have their meetings, press the flesh, do that stuff. And then when they're done, they get back in their box uninterrupted, do their stuff. Then when they get home, they can leave their laptop in the box and come home and completely disconnect with work and completely reconnect with the family and the kids. And I think it's to be a great thing. Again, demographics matter. If you don't think demographics matter, then this is what I want you to do. When you graduate, I want you to set up your dental office for the first year in Afghanistan and practice in Afghanistan for about a year, and then maybe go to the Congo or Ivory Coast. And after about 3 different countries, you'll learn demographics matter. It's a lot easier to make money in LA than it is in Ivory Coast. And so demographics matter. But if you're young and you're single and you want to find the love of your life and you want to be as pretty as a peacock, well, you got better odds in Birmingham than you do 2 hours out of town in a town of 500. So the DSOs have quit going to small towns because they're not going there. They've already, in fact, I podcasted every major DSO CEO on my podcast, from here to Australia to Singapore, and they won't go rural because attracting and retaining young dentists is the hardest obstacle, and they're not going to get any single person to go to rural. Like, see, you're married, so you've already surrendered, you've thrown in the towel, and you're willing to commit yourself to this woman, and so it doesn't matter where you're at. So demographics matter. And was that the last question, or did you have any more?
I had another question. You mentioned that it sounds like you're a little bit bearish on the specialty of orthodontics. Is that the only specialty that you think is might not have a bright future, or do you feel like orthodontics has a bright future and things are going to change for it?
Well, it's kind of interesting because it's all relative, right? I mean, it's relative to your framework. And when the average American doesn't make $20 an hour, it's, when you say that orthodontists make $289 and it's probably headed down, I mean, you're not going to get anybody who works at Starbucks to feel sorry for the orthodontist making $289 going down. But yeah, I think orthodontists have the most exposure to publicly traded companies like Smiles Direct Club. I mean, that's a huge force that's publicly traded. You got Invisalign. I mean, I just podcast interviewed the CEO of Invisalign, and I mean, my gosh, those are some intense people with billions of dollars that you're competing with. Like, if you look behind you, that Today's Dental, that's my office. I'm competing. The guy across the street from me, he's a nut. I can prove it because he's my drinking buddy. And I mean, I'm competing against a bunch of single dentists with wives and kids. That's lame. Could you imagine competing against Smiles Direct Club and Invisalign, publicly traded with Harvard MBAs? Now, will they still make over $200,000 a year? Yes. Will anybody cry a river in pain that the poor orthodontist only made a couple $100,000 a year? This is America. No one's going to cry you a river for making $200,000 or $300,000 a year. But yes, I mean, when I look at their model compared to endodontist, periodontist, pediatric dentist, orthodontist, yeah, I think orthodontist has the most exposure to publicly traded entities like Smiles Direct and Align Technology, which owns Invisalign and iTero, versus, I think orthodontists have the most exposure to the most serious competition. What they've got going good for them is, most people get ortho. When I was little, I was born in 1962, and I was in Kansas, and, I had 5 sisters and a brother. Back then, only the ugliest kid got ortho. I mean, you had to have your teeth. You had to look like that you could eat corn on the cob through a chain link fence. And mom and dad say, yeah, we got to fix up Buster. He's headed right for the seminary. And, but now with birth control and family size going from 4.5 kids to under 2, now everybody can afford ortho. And now you have ortho, everybody gets ortho in grammar school and high school so that they can get married off in college. And then when that fails, they come back in for round 2 to get fixed back up at 35 or 40 to be ready to go back on the market. So I've noticed all my ortho and cosmetics is first time around and then after divorce. In fact, I want to end on the divorce thing. I just can't say this enough, dental schools. The women, we have one woman on the deal. That's just Amy. Amy, are you married?
No, I'm not.
Okay, and you're a D3?
Yes.
Okay, so let me tell you about Amy. Amy is going to get out of school and she's going to be a doctor, and she's going to make $10,000 a month from 25 to 65. That's $5 million. And you know what the smartest kid in your class is going to do? That's a boy. They always go out and marry the hottest looking girl at the Waffle House. And you know why the hottest looking girl at the Waffle House marries you? Because she knows you're going to be a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer, and she'll never work a day again in her life. And she'll destroy $10,000 a month from age 25 to 65, which is also $5 million. So the spread between marrying Amy and the waitress at the Waffle House is $10 million. I mean, how could you be sitting in a classroom where every girl in there is going to make $10,000 a month for 40 years, and you're like, nah, I think I'll get on Plenty of Fish? You're plenty out of your mind. If you think getting on Match or Plenty of Fish is the right idea, why Amy's sitting right there, I'd be cooking her breakfast. I'd be bringing her lunch every day. Amy, what's your favorite sandwich? What's your favorite flower?
Not exactly sure. Not quite on the
Well,
market
hey, don't
yet,
put it
so
too
not.
My
Nobody needs to
gosh.
be doing that, but I like chocolate. You can bring me chocolate. I won't date you, but
My God,
I'll take chocolate.
I'd bring her chocolate. God dang. Be smart about it. You know what? I graduated $87,000 in student loans. I thought that was a lot of money. You know what my divorce cost? $3.8 million. I don't know why I don't memorize that number, but if you take $3,800,000 divided by $87,000, yeah, my divorce was 43 times more expensive than dental school. And the funniest thing is when you come out of dental school, you always say, oh my God, cry me a river. I got $400,000 student loans. Dude, your first divorce will cost $1 million. And your second one will cost $2 or $3 million. So the bottom line is all this money in economics. That's why I always say, do what you love. If you do what you love, you'll never work another day in your life. Same thing in marriage. If you love who you marry, if you love your work and love your wife and love your kids, it's going to be a wonderful life. You're in the richest country in the world and you're going to be a doctor. But if you want to play your odds, if I was a doctor, by the way, did you know that this is crazy. Do you know when people who are in the same occupation marry the same person occupation, instead of a national average divorce rate of 50%, it falls to 10%. If you're an accountant, marry an accountant. If you're a lawyer, marry a lawyer. If you're a dentist, marry a dentist. You know why? Because communication is the biggest problem. And if you're both an accountant, guess what you could talk about? Accounting. You probably both know a shitload about accounting, but I really don't want to talk to my wife about, crafts and arts and paper mache and all these other things. So when you're, and that research was postgraduate level. We're not talking about a 4-year degree, but if you're a postgraduate, like in dental school, if you're a postgraduate and you marry in your postgraduate specialty, you only have a 10% failure rate because you got 90% of your whole life is in common. So when you're looking at all these numbers and you're looking at all these things, you say, oh, I got to figure all this stuff out. Well, get back to the basics. Like everybody who talks about financial planning will never even talk about financial planning. You could listen to them for 40 hours. They never get the financial. You know what financial planning is? Never get married. You'll never get divorced. Marriage is the only cause of divorce. Never have a kid, never have college tuition. Look at Bill Maher. He tells everybody, they say, well, how did you have $1 million extra to donate to the presidential campaign? He goes, never married, never had a kid. If you never marry and never had a kid, my God, you could be a crack addict and still be a multimillionaire. So look what we learned last night. Well, guess what? Did you know instead of having 8 kids, if you only had 4, you'll have twice as much money? Just think of the pizza. You got a pie. You want to cut it for 8 kids? You want to cut it for 4 kids? Or you want to be like me and just eat the whole damn pizza yourself? So the bottom line is really smart financial planning is marriage and children. Now, I had 4 boys in 60 months. Greatest decision I ever made. Love them to death. Talk to them every day. I can't imagine. I feel the saddest that I wasn't able to talk to my dad like that. When I was in college, when I was in dental school, if I want to talk to my dad, I had to go to a payphone and put in a dime every minute. And my dad would be talking like, you could hear the change going through. And now you can FaceTime your dad. That's just amazing. So, do what you love. That's how I'm going to end this thing. If you want to go to ortho school because you just only want to do ortho, man, if you would rather do ortho than load the dishwasher and take out the trash, then go to ortho school. And if this is the love of your life, marry her. But remember, when you marry, that is the highest financial risk you're ever going to take. And when you get divorced, and one is a stay-home mother that has no way of earning a living short of the IHOP, and the other one is a doctor of dental surgery, they tell the doctor, like, well, you got a job, you'll do good. And that only fails 10%. In fact, of the doctor marrying doctor, it's about a 10% failure rate. I can validate that in my personal life. The doctors I know that marry doctors, they have some of the great marriages and the most wealth I basically see. So pick your spouse. Awesome. Jeff just messaged me. He says, I called Amy. And Jeff.
I'm not sure my wife would be very happy with that, but
okay.
But she's
Like I said, I'm not
I
married,
met Sam. Any other final questions before I go?
So we're
Does
good.
Dentaltown have a dating
You know,
piece to it?
actually, for all kidding aside, it is somewhere on the. I'll see if I can find it. It's a joke. I don't know if it's. I think it's under leisure. There's only one post in it from the. Yeah. It's the bottom one. It's called Dentaltown Meat Market, but meat is MEET. Like I want to meet you. The meat market. Get it? It's a pun. But it's under leisure and it's under weather. I wonder why it's not alphabetized. Who knows? I just found a typo on my own website. It's not alphabetized. Leisures, and those are the things we don't put on today's act topics. Like your doctors, I'm not going to monitor you talking about politics and religion and all that stuff, but we don't show it on the today's active topics or whatever. So you got to go to leisure, then you got to click into politics. Do not enter if easily offended. Religion and the spiritual side of dentistry. Most of what people are on Dentaltown for is learning dentistry, how to do it faster, better, easier, higher quality, and cheaper. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. What business subjects do you recommend us learning while we're in school? And then what resources do you know of to teach us those subjects?
I would send me an email, howard@dentaltown.com, and I'll send you back my reading list. And those are I think it's about the 30 books that changed my mind. And then I would get online. So I went to MBA school because my dad taught me all the business I know, because when he had the franchise Sonic Drive-In, they'd have all these franchisees course, because in franchises, like 80% of new restaurants go out of business in 2 years, but with franchises, like 95% are still in business in 5 years. I mean, they understand the business. And my dad taught me all that, and I was his only son, so I would go with him. My 5 sisters didn't want to go. My baby brother wasn't born until I was 17 because my parents were Catholic. It's a Catholic Russian roulette birth control thing. And so I would always go with my dad. So I learned all stuff. But I thought, I'm going to go back to MBA school and just in case, get a formal training. Well, I bought my first laptop. That was 98. And I sat there Mondays and Wednesdays from 6 to 10 for 2 years. And I sit there and I took all the notes that applied to my dental office. And then when I was done, that was about 30 hours. So I ranted it out in 30 hours and called it the 30-day dental MBA. And that's free on YouTube and iTunes. My book reads are, The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, The Essays of Warren Buffett. My greatest business guru is the next 4 books. And that is, the first one was Investing in Stocks, Warren Buffett, who basically learned everything from The Intelligent Investor. But Jim Collins is the best. It's all research driven. It's, oh my gosh, look at that. How are you doing? What's your name?
What's your name?
Olivia Vo.
Olivia Vo.
Olivia Vo. And how old are you?
3.
Oh my God, you're the same age as my granddaughter. I hope you meet her someday. Good to Great, Great by Choice, How the Mighty Fall, Built to Last. Jim Collins, he's a PhD guy in Colorado, and he takes his grad students, and they'll spend about 5 years with a big data set, and then they'll write a book on it. Good to Great. Built to Last was the book I read. I wouldn't read that one because a lot of those companies, that was a long time ago. But, he asked why, look in the last, I'll give you an example on investing. In the last century, only General Electric lasted 100 years. The only company that's over 100 years old in Japan? And we're talking about publicly traded companies. Do you know the only one in Japan that's made it 100 years?
Toshiba.
Is it a soy sauce?
It's Nintendo. It started out in 1865 with playing cards, and then went to checkers and chess, and now it's a video game. But only one company. And GE had little people like Thomas Edison and a couple of geniuses along the way. So right now, when you see that Amazon is trading at 100 times earnings, so if you bought the stock today, it would take all the profit for 100 years to buy that today. Would that be intelligent investing? I mean, to say that the stock market is not in a bubble, you might say, well, that's your opinion. No one can predict the future. Dude, I can predict that in 100 years from now. Okay, let me explain it this way. When I was your age, the average company in Wall Street was the senior citizen. It was over 65 years old. Now you're coming out of school and the average company is under 20 years old. So they went from being an old folk to a teenager. Well, that's going down, 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 down. And the last century, only Nintendo made it in Japan and GE made it in America and everybody else. In fact, I think all the publicly traded companies in the year 2000, I think already 40% of them are gone. So when you learn the foundational works of The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, read anything by Jim Collins. But I like Jim Collins' opposite book. You know, it was Built to Last, Good to Great, Great by Choice. But one was the inverse. You know, you can't have up without down, right without left, addition without subtraction, multiplication without division. And he wrote How the Mighty Fall. And he said, well, let's just look at this in reverse. How did all these great companies collapse? And so eventually you start understanding patterns. And then you need to know your patients. I think Anthropology is the best. Sapiens by Yuval, The Gifted Boss, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. All it takes is and then my book, my God, Uncomplicated Business. What I did was that little girl there, when my first granddaughter was born, I was 50. And I realized that my dad and both of my grandfathers, 3 for 3, all died at 61. And I'll be 58 next month. So when she was born, I had just turned 50 and I thought, okay, I lived half a century. I have no memories of my grandparents because my granddads, all my grandmas I remembered, and all that was great. But my granddads all were dead before I was one or two. I have no memory of them. So I thought, I'm going to write a book. I'm 50 years old. I got a DDS, an MBA. I collect $1 million a month. I got 50 employees. I qualify to write a book. So I wrote a book to my granddaughter, and I didn't know if she's going to be a dentist. I didn't know if she's going to own a restaurant. I didn't know what she's going to do. So I wrote a book to my granddaughter, and the secret to writing is rewriting. So the first draft was 600 pages. I wrote it. I edited it down to 400. I edited it down. I got it down to a short read. It's called Uncomplicate Business. But the bottom line is, I love my book, Uncomplicate Business, but read go to YouTube and do my 30-day dental MBA or iTunes. And my gosh, that should be the easiest part of your business. Yeah. I mean, and plus that's another thing about business you're going to realize. I can tell when I'm in school, some of you kids, you like business. It's kind of like checkers or chess. You know, there's people, I had 5 sisters. You know, that sister always walks up to you and says, hey, you want to play Risk? You're like, really? Anybody of you ever played Risk before? How many hours was the game?
Like 8 or 9. It lasted too long.
So love my sister, but I don't want to play Risk. And Monopoly, the only time Monopoly was fun is back in the day. We had a station wagon. There were no seatbelts. And we drove from like Kansas to Disneyland. And it'd be, my dad and mom be sitting in the front seat with a big old case of Old Milwaukee in between them, drinking the beer, throwing them out the window. They're environmentalists and everything. And me and my sisters all be in the back of a station wagon playing Monopoly or Risk on a 20-hour drive from Wichita to Anaheim. That's fun. But it's the same thing with business. Some of you kids, you just love business. And if you love business, dentistry is going to be fun with you because your competition, none of them know their cost. And I don't think any of them even like business. I don't think you pick, like going into the priesthood. My 2 oldest sisters are nuns. It's the same thing. When I did my 30-day dental MBA, the greatest fans were all Catholic priests. They're saying, I went to the seminary for 8 years. I graduated as a priest, and they moved me to Fort Scott, Kansas. I'm in charge of an elementary school, a church. They're $2 million in debt. We got 4 lawsuits, and all the teachers want to raise. It's like, how did reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John for 8 years prepare me for this shit? What the hell's going on? And my sister was a nun, and they were saying, well, I know it's about dentistry, but I've listened to them. I think if you just take out patient and put in parishioner, it'll teach you a lot. I had the longest, nicest letters from all these priests saying, "Oh man, that was awesome. I turned my whole church around, my school around." I mean, it's people, time, and money. That's all it is. You got to manage people. That's sports, HR, get the best players, attract them and retain them. And then there's time. I mean, you only have so much time in a day, and you pay all your bills monthly and mortgage, equipment, bill, computer, insurance, malpractice. And then you got money. And money is I think it's the easiest part of the three. The part you'll never understand is the people, because I guarantee, I don't know how young or old you are, but as you get older, you will find out that people are just batshit crazy. I mean, you'll never, no matter how crazy you think people are, every year you get older, you're like, wow, that is a new level of crazy. I was not aware that humans are that crazy, but they're just wild animals, and they never cease to amaze me at how wild they can be. And then time and money. So if you're interested in business, dentistry is like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, you don't have to be that good in business to make it in dentistry. You'd have to be in restaurants. You'd have to be if you were publicly traded. But in dentistry, a cottage industry where not one participant has more than 1% of the entire market. I mean, there's 150,000 general dentists and 30,000 specialists, and Heartland just passed 1,000 dental offices. They'd have to have 1,500 offices to be at 1%. So it's a totally non-competitive cottage industry. And if you get really sophisticated in business and go into dentistry, it's pretty easy money.
Sure. On that, in your dental MBA, you speak a lot about incentivized pay. How do you, that makes sense for hygienists to pay them off of production, but how do you do that for front desk and assistant personnel?
Well, actually, I don't pay my hygienists on that anymore. So what it is this: it's called delayed gratification. So you're going to school for 8 years to get a better job. So you have a far enough vision to say, I will take a pay cut. In fact, I'll take a loss for 8 if I can make it back up in the 16, the 24, the 32 years following for that. Okay. Those are the people that respond to incentives. So the weirdest thing about incentives is the more money you make, the more incentives work. Like if you go find a Harvard MBA working at a Fortune 500 company who's making $100,000 a year and give him a chance to bonus for another 100,000 years, if he does these 3 things, he'll get it every time. But you go into take dentistry, your dental assistant, she's been making $20 an hour for 40 years. If she really cared about money, she would have gone back to school and become a hygienist. I've had 2 dental assistants become dentists. I've had 3 or 4 dental assistants become hygienists. So the only person where the bonus really matters is your other doctors and the office manager. Or the president of the company. So see, if I put all the bonus with the doctors who produce and the office manager, they'll get her done. But if I sit there and divide it up evenly amongst all the people who make the least amount of money, they were never about money. I mean, they just, it doesn't motivate them. Nobody at Walmart is going to work twice as hard for an end of month bonus. If that's the way their mind worked, they wouldn't be the greeter at Walmart. So it's a very interesting thing that the more you chase money, the more you respond to incentives, which actually sounds pretty obvious.
So what is your way of encouraging your employees to work harder then? Because that was something you did talk about a lot in your 30-day dental MBA. So
when you come out of school, you're married with kids, got student loan debt, you want an opportunity to work hard, and you'll work through lunch and you'll stay late and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at the people who didn't do delayed gratification for 8 years for a chance to make more money, and they just been going with the flow, money always shows up. The earliest it's going to show up is 4. Sometimes it shows up 6. Number 1, do they like the people they work with? And that's where dentists fail in HR, because they're in there doing a root canal and they think it's all about the root canal. They don't realize why they're doing a root canal. Their hygienist is screaming at the assistant and the receptionist, and they all hate each other, and they're just miserable. And they're miserable because you're the bad parent that's letting these kids fight. So having a non-toxic work environment, how many times do I have to show you that I'm moody, and some days I come in and I'm nice, and other days I come in and I just make everybody feel bad, and some nights I do my job, and other, you want consistent, happy team players. And if you set up a job where, like, I seriously could run 20 red lights on the way to work just to see my Christine, my Lori, my Sam. I mean, there's so many people. When I walk in there, the first thing I want to see is Kyle. I mean, when you surround yourself in a team that's fun, that's the best thing. The next thing is, do they have any purpose to what they're doing? If all you're doing is on an assembly line, every time the bottle of water comes by, you just screw on this thing. The why. So every civilization has had a god. Why? I mean, you go back 5,000 years, the pyramids, they have not found a civilization in archaeology that did not have a god, because it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't go over well with humans. Well, actually, you're just born. Try not to get eaten by a wolf or a tiger, and then eventually you'll get eaten by a wolf or a tiger and it'll be dead. I mean, it's very confusing to people. They want a why. So when I opened up my dental office to give them a why, my first job was, we were not going to see patients on Friday because I sat up in the third largest unfluoridated city in America. And I don't care what anybody's thoughts are on water fluoridation, because if you're really can't understand that fluoride is the 13th most common element of the planet. It shows up naturally, whatever naturally means. I mean, is a black hole natural? I think AIDS, syphilis, and chlamydia is all natural too. But the ocean is 1.3 part per million. And when you drink city water with half that level, you have significant less decay. Now, there's all kinds of Karens out there that say, well, it's not natural fluoride, it's sodium fluoride. No, Karen, it was formed from a collapsing star. It's freaking fluoride. But I set up where every Friday we wouldn't see patients. We were going to get Phoenix fluoride. And I was so young and dumb and naive, I thought this would take us, 3 Fridays max. It took every Friday for 2 years. We had to meet with all the city councils. One city councilman thought one thought it was caused sickle cell anemia. Another one thought it hurt orange trees and would hurt citrus. Another one was concerned only for his small cat. He goes, well, you're drinking fluoridated water, but you're a big human. My cat's only 10 pounds. So we had to get letters from the Veterinarian Association and the Sickle Cell Anemia Foundation. We worked it every Friday for 2 years, but what were we doing? When we got her done, the CDC wrote us a letter, said that their models show that we prevented about 875,000 cavities a year into perpetuity. And I mean, that was the why. My team felt like they were doing some other things, going into second grade classes during February Dental Health Month. That your town has a big fair. I wouldn't go to the fair. I brought my entire office, and we'd go down to the Department of Health and Human Services. They give us 1 million dental brochures about gum disease and everything. We'd set up a table, and these parking lot stalls were $10 for the fair, where you park the size of a car, and people would just walk by, and they'd come up to you, and oh my gosh, we had the appointment book out there. The average fair, we would make 200 appointments of just people coming by and saying, I need to go to dentist. I haven't been to dentist in 5 years. Well, come on in. And then they meet all the staff, and we're all in uniform. And so the bottom line is, if you get a staff that, if they like to be with each other and they have a why, and you say we're going, I mean, and I go into offices, they'll be like, okay, Saturday we're going to go to a continuing education. Cheapskate says, well, I'm not going to pay him. I mean, they don't pay him on Saturday. They're going to learn something. Oh, that's real nice. So you make $250,000 a year and drove here in a Porsche and have a 5,000 square foot home, and you don't even want to pay your $20 dental assistant to go to the meeting. Okay, so now you're a cheapskate. Number two, even if you do pay, there's always that one person, oh, I can't, my dog died and ate the furniture. So someone never wants to play in the team. Well, the rest of the team knows that. They don't like her. She doesn't like them. It's all about getting the right team. But here's where I got to tell you that you're missing the most. I had a patient that owned the Arizona Cardinals, and he wasn't the coach of the team. He wasn't the gosh darn any of that stuff. So I go into a dental office and you say, well, I hate my staff. I hate my hygienist. They always quit. I can't stand them. It's the worst part of my job. I'm like, well, then why is it your job? Remember what we talked about? do a job you love and you'll never work another day in your life? Well, you obviously hate HR. You obviously, the results are you can't keep any of your employees for 2 years. They obviously don't get along. And what do they all have in common? You're in charge of HR. So that means you need to sit there and say, hey, here's HR. And I think my hygienist will do it better. My assistant, my receptionist, my wife, my spouse, my mom, someone. But do things you like, you'll get good at it. And when you're getting your butt kicked, I mean, can you imagine if you joined, say you joined a men's UFC club in your backyard, and every night after school you go there and just get knocked out with rear naked chokeholds, and you'd have to crawl home. You probably would quit. I mean, if something's beating you up bad and you can't get the morale, you can't get new patients in marketing. I had one dentist tell me, he said, I'd rather be beaten with a stick than do a molar root canal. I'm like, dude, they're called endodontist. You don't ever have to do one ever again. Just find an endodontist and quit doing it. So if you're really bad at something, I just can't figure out why you're still doing it. Delegate, but you won't delegate because you're an animal and animals control. Animals, you let a woodpecker free. The first thing they do is they start making their own hole. They want to disappear in their own home and their own hole. So, just if you're good at it, you'll probably like it. And if you're not good at it, you got two choices. Either you got to figure out a way to get good at it or you got to delegate it. And delegating is against every animal instinct you have, because like people say that Americans don't trust the government. Where does that come from? Name me one animal in the animal kingdom that trusts anything. You think there's some animal skipping through the forest saying, oh, look at that little black tiger. I'm going to go pet the puma. And look at this bright, shiny red fruit. Okay, you're already dead twice. You didn't survive for billions of years by trusting everything and trying everything. You lasted this long because you won't try a new food and you won't try anything new and you stay really close to home. And then you make fun of that. You say, oh, I'm a homebody. And why does my daughter, she only will eat chicken McNuggets? Well, you know why? Because she ate them, they taste good, and she didn't die. And you're the one showing up with a assorted bowl of colored fruits, and she's got 1 million years saying, dude, don't eat that. You'll eat it and die, just like the other monkey. So, again, at this point, I have no idea what question I'm answering. So you'll have another question? Or we
yes, I have a question that kind of pertains to the question that you just answered, that was like motivation and motivating your staff.
Is that Antonio?
Antonio.
Oh, there you are.
Yes. And my question to you is, do you think that evaluations for your staff work? Because I've had a job for 8 years and I have an evaluation every 6 months. And for me, it's very motivating. I don't know, I've never seen a dental office do it. What are your opinions on doing evaluations?
Well, what I would say is whenever I go into a dental office, and this is a good deal about getting a job out of school. These are the questions kids will ask me when they come out of school and say, Howard, I'm going back to my hometown and there's 2 dentists and one will pay me 25% of production, but he'll pay the lab bill. But the other one will pay me 30%, but I have to pay half the lab bill. Which one should I go to? I'm like, I don't even know how this is a question. I mean, number one dental office, the dentist's been divorced 3 times and no one's worked for him longer than 2 years. And after 25 new patients a month for 40 years, he still needs new patients. And the other one's got a whole bunch of staff that's been with him 5 to 20 years, and all of his patients come back, and he has 2 or 3 hygienists. That's the skill you want to learn. And I can't tell you leadership skills and management skills because humans are too complex. You remember that coach in Indiana who got fired for throwing a chair? What was his name? Jimmy Wright or
Bobby Knight?
Bobby Knight. See, I had the rhyme. Bobby Knight. People say, well, he threw a chair. Dude, he won the championship several times. I don't know. All the players are young college boys. That's different than if they were all from the same nunnery that my sister's in, a nunnery. I just can't imagine 5 old lady nuns being the same as 5 young college boys. I don't know. I'm not going to second guess his parenting, his coaching. The players seem to love him and he seemed to always win, right? But if I came out here and said, well, you know what? When your hygienist has an attitude, you should throw a chair at her. Hell yeah, that'll show her. Throw a couple of chairs at that girl and she'll get in gear. I mean, you might get sued. You might have your license taken away. I mean, Bobby Knight got fired. So This is what I tell people. You can't find a book on leadership or management that applies because you're you. So what I think the best management applies is exactly what, and is it Antonia?
Yeah, it's Antonia. Yes.
Antonia, what you just asked is the perfect answer. The best leadership book is when you crawl back in your rewind play and say, who connected with me? I'll give you an example. I grew up with 5 sisters. I played Barbie dolls, and I could play Barbie dolls better than anybody. And I walked into school, and this guy said, how much do you weigh? And I said, 93 pounds. He goes, perfect. And he gave me a high five. He goes, I need a varsity 98. I don't have anybody that weighs under 98 pounds. And he took a liking to me and gave me all this attention. And that's why I wrestled all through high school, and that's why my boys do. So I asked you, well, who connected with you? You had teachers you didn't like and you wanted away from them, and you had teachers you loved. You went out for sports that you quit the sport, and you did sports because of the coach. Well, those are all things that worked on you. So if it worked on you, that's half the equation. So you already responded to this. You already liked this. It already worked for you. So now all you got to do is keep that flowing for the next round. So I think the best management leader is someone you've already met in school, in sports, in church, or for Sam, his favorite bartender. He's right, Sam?
Yes, sir. That's right.
So, yeah, but I guarantee you this. This is why I like anthropology. Like, if you haven't read *Sapiens* by Yuval Harari, read anthropology. You're at the end of the day, you're working with this Homo sapien, and I don't even know why they call him Homo sapiens. You killed Homo erectus, you killed Neanderthal, you killed Denisovan. You're the only Homo left. So I don't know why they call him Homo sapiens. We're down to just sapes. And that's why Yuval calls his book *Sapiens*. And if you don't know how sapien works, how it thinks, how it processes, imagine your whole life you're going to be a lion tamer. And what's the only subject you skipped? Oh, reading any book on lions. You would know that was a bad idea. And then people that spend their whole life in family, in marriage, in business, selling sandwiches or selling iPods or whatever the hell, and they don't even know how a sapien works. What's really scary is when they have a kid and don't even know how kids work. Like, at least I was sort of, when I had made 4 boys in 60 months. I did it all myself. And oh my God, before the first one came out, I was already back at the Barnes & Noble in the ASU library. I only wanted books written by PhDs who wrote about raising, a boy as opposed to a girl, because I had a boy. So when little Eric came out, anybody who wrote a book with a PhD on how to raise a 1-year-old sapien boy, I was reading. It's like, well, I'm sure you know more about it than me. I'm not going to write a book on raising sapiens. It's my first one. So humans, learning how sapien works for yourself, your own mind, your family, your staff, your team. If you get an A on, I'd rather get an A on sapien and a D in money. I'd probably end up with more money than if you got an A in money and got a D in sapien. And there's just so many people who just, they never got an owner's manual for the human mind, and they quite frankly don't even know how it works. And nobody really knows how it works, because like artificial intelligence, oh my God, it's like the telegraph went into the typewriter and they think they're going to get AI out of that. I'll give you a classic example. My 4 boys have turned into 6 grandchildren, and that's the only reason you never kill your children, is because no matter what they do, they'll make you a grandchild to make up for it. And here, Google driverless cars, they keep telling everybody, well, every day, millions of miles are driven in big data, and we run algorithms through all this big data. My little guy, we're out there with a campfire, and he touches the grill, and he touches it, and he pulls it back like that. Never touched it again for the next 10 days I was there. One exposure, I ain't doing it again. But what would AI need? Millions of exposures, big data, tens of millions. We need 100 million people to lay their face on the grill before we can figure out that this is not they're so, when they actually think they're coming in on AI, and by the way, they've been saying it, IBM's been saying they would have AI the next year ever since 1950, and this is 2020. Just like when I was in your school, they said that they would have a vaccine against Streptococcus mutans, be the end of caries, the vaccine against P. gingivalis, the end of gum disease. Yeah, 32 years later, they've never even had a clinical trial on this. So everything takes longer. And the reason you think everything's around the corner is because that's one of Sapiens' deals. They're impulsive and they think everything will take a minute and everything will take a few lifetimes.
All
Yes, sir.
right. Well, do we have one more question?
Yeah, it's kind of a two-part question that's kind of specific. If you're in a practice that has met capacity, is it worth increasing the fees and keep one chair open most of the time for emergencies, that's higher priced operations, or continue to fill that chair and just block an hour or two at the end of the day to fill with those emergency cases if they come up? And can you only do that if you're, or can you do that if you're in PPO network?
So that's a great question, and I like to explain it like it's a car. You got a gas pedal and a brake, and the gas pedal, you floor the gas. That's capacity. You had one chair, you got a two chair, you got a three chair. A lot of people say, "Well, we're maxed out. I only have four chairs." Well, you have four chairs for open Monday through Thursday 8 to 5. That's 32 hours. There's 168 hours in a week. So number one, we already know the only three publicly traded dental offices on earth, one 300 Smiles in Australia, Pacific Smiles, and that was Sydney, Pacific Smiles in Melbourne, and Q&R out of Singapore. They're all open 7 to 7, 7 days a week. So there's 168 hours in a week. So you can expand capacity by just being open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the other one is the break. It's pretty silly to say, "Oh, I can't take your money today to take $1 to fix your tooth because I got someone in the chair that's only willing to pay me 50 cents." So that's called selective pruning, like they do in architecture. I love it when I see great economic concepts in other completely different industries that apply, but like agricultural. When they're decorating and they're building a new center, they'll plant 3 or 4 times extra trees and bushes because they know shit's going to die. And then every year or two, they do selective pruning. So when someone calls out the phone and says, "Oh, I got a toothache and I want to come down right now and have you fix the crown," I'm sorry, I can't take your money today. Please stand in line to give me money because I'm so busy doing dentistry on someone who only paid me half as much. So the selective pruning is selective pruning off. I wouldn't selectively prune off Medicaid because I would never do Medicaid. Never, ever do business with Medicaid or Medicare because historically, the only purpose the government is they're thugs who hire thugs to shake you down for money. And historically, 1% of you are killed by your own family and 6% of you be killed by the government. And when I'm working with Blue Cross and Blue Shield and United and all these deals and I make a mistake, they call me up and say, "Dude, you made a mistake. You got to give us a refund, this and that." Or they may decide, "I think you're doing that on purpose. I'm not doing business with you." But Medicaid, oh my God, they find a mistake, they're going to arrest you. They're going to remember how your mom said, "Please don't kidnap people and bring them back home to the basement and kill them." Well, that's what every government's done for 5,000 years. You screw it with Medicaid, they kidnap you, they arrest you, they put you in a cage. And then they want to know why no one likes him, no one trusts him. In the United States, the largest political party since the history of the country has been the 100 million Americans who are adults who've never voted. Because when they say vote, they're like, "Oh, am I supposed to vote for the elephant or the ass?" I mean, for every 4 years, I get 2 choices. And the choices are always like, "Would you rather die of a heart attack or cancer? Would you rather have your leg amputated above or below the knee?" Don't do business with the government because you risk everything. And so Medicaid, if they're so concerned about the poor, they should pay you more money. I'll just give you several examples. I know a dentist, greatest guy ever. His wife was not the smartest girl ever, but she was up front and she was billing Medicaid. And when they finally found it out, he got the best attorney in town. And he said, "If you do a plea deal, I can get you out in 5 years." So he had to pack up and move to Mexico. By the way, when you go on a cruise and you go to all these little destinations in Central and South America, you're going to meet all kinds of dentists that look like you, born in the same country you are, and they're all going to have a real bullshit story of why they decided to pick up and go to Cabo. But it's always Medicaid or drugs. They're either eating Vicodin or screwing up on Medicare or Medicaid, and they were forced to either sit in a cage or leave the country. 25% of all the Americans who leave the country are running from the law, just like 25% of the people that come into this country are running from law, because that's the way immigration data has always shown. And the government, the only thing Medicaid cares about is some young attorney making the newspaper that he got Dr. Good stealing money and he got him in jail, and then he'll get a promotion while you go sit in a cage. So Medicaid, Medicare, anything to do with the government. I'll just say it like this. If you get in bed with anything, you're going to get screwed. Okay. I don't know how to explain this any more obvious for you. If you don't want to get screwed, don't get in bed with anything. And Medicaid and Medicare is the last thing I'd ever get in bed with. I'd take a job at the In-N-Out Burger before I did anything with the government, because they're cruel and they're unusual. I mean, this country has only not been at war for 20 years, since 1776, and you have more people in prison today than Joseph Stalin did. I mean, I don't know. I thought those were bad guys. Why do you have so many people in jail? How come you've only found 20 years not to be invading another country? I mean, why can't you just mind your own business and quit killing people? And you say, but Howard, I'm an American. And I'm just not doing it, man. I'm not doing your government thing. I'm not doing your Medicaid thing. Not doing your Medicare thing. And when you look for government to be the answer, government is the problem. Government has always been the problem. And when you say, oh, but government's the solution, okay, hopefully you're in grammar school. But if you're really saying that after high school, you didn't get an education. Government is the problem. They're never the solution in the last 5,000 years of recorded history. Now you want me to tell you what I really think of the government?
Yeah, I think you're pretty pro-government.
Oh my God. But they're just one of those things. They're like hurricanes, tornadoes, and earthquakes. The government, hurricane, tornado, they just pop up their head. They destroy a bunch of shit pretty regularly. And, that's why I like this virus. I mean, I'm so glad I'm being attacked by a virus instead of another government. The people, I've been to all these countries. I mean, I've been to countries where you might think the women all have to wear saris and veils and all this stuff. Yeah, as soon as the lecture's over and you go back to the house, all that stuff comes off. They're playing the Rolling Stones and they're making you a vodka cranberry, and they're just like you. Dentists are the same all over the world. All the people all around the world are all the same. It's just government's trying to play them all differently. But enough of that. I always promise I'm never going to talk about religion, sex, politics, and violence. So
you didn't hit any of those today. Don't worry about it.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap this up here. I know we got some hungry people on the call. It's getting a little late here, but thank you, Howard, for everything, for answering all of our questions. It was wonderful to have you on. And
Amy, if you get too many boxes of chocolates, you got to mail me some. If you get more chocolates than you can eat, you got to send me the leftovers.
Oh, all right, deal. In exchange for that, though, I'm wondering if we could send out that book list you were talking about, the 30 books. If we could send out people on this meeting so that they can do some additional reading.
Shoot me an. Send me an email and I'll hit reply and send it right back.
Yeah,
perfect.
Howard, I can also email you and I can send it out to our club members.
Yeah, and my email is howard@dentaltown.com, and if you ever want to email me. I mean, I love and I love it because when I was little, I mean, my God, you know how many times Kenny Anderson let me go to work with them and all this stuff, and that's what we've been doing for 200 years. And in fact, most all the dentists were trained as apprentice. When you go back to Pierre Fichard, to G.V. Black didn't go to dental school. He didn't have any initials behind his name. It was all just homies helping homies. And that's what it's all about from generation to generation. It's just an honor to be the 60-year-old old guy helping the kids as they come out of grammar school.
Thank you so much. We all appreciate it very much.
All right. All right. Peace
All right.
out.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you. Have a
choosing
great day.
dentistry.